What's up guys, Theo here with week 5 in the NES. If you missed my last week's battle, I'll just go ahead and explain why I don't have a layout now again. Long story short, real life got in the way, and I'm recording weeks 4 through weeks 8 all at the same time. I was just going to do one really long video, but then the first video ended up being 20 minutes long, so I'm just going to do 4 separate mini videos, I guess. So week 5 was against Fluga, coach of the Hamilton Rai-Cats. Pretty good friend of mine. We have a couple of projects on the channel, and we'll be having a new one sort of soon, once my real life slows down a little bit more. So he and I know each other pretty well, and these battles are always pretty intense. He also has a really good team and is doing very well this year, so I did not take him lightly in any way, shape, or form. I actually felt like this team that I brought was pretty strong. I'm pretty excited to bring Gudra, who I picked up before this week, over Pelipper. While Pelipper did well on the team, I feel like Gudra has a better fit long term, and can kind of do a bit more, and it also gives me a sap sipper user, which I am not bringing this week, but I can bring to kind of fend off the grass weakness I have in the middle of that team. So first off, I have Scarf Jirachi again, just because it outspeeds basically anything on his team, except for Scarf Garchomp, or +1 Garchomp, I guess I should say, because you can just use these Sandstorm and stuff. And it speed ties with Scarfed Staraptor, which is nice. So I have Scarf Jirachi with Iron Head, Psychic, U-Turn, and Ice Punch. Pretty standard, but the moveset works pretty well. I opted for Psychic specifically to be able to hit stuff like Weezing and Buzzwole pretty well, because while they have really good physical defense, they don't really have good special defense. So I'm gonna need to save Jirachi. Next up is Choice Banded Azu with Ice Punch, Aqua Jet, Play Rough, and Knockoff. Again, pretty standard, but all 4 of those things work pretty well. Knockoff is mostly for stuff like Slowbro and Decidueye, which didn't come. Fluka also has Darmanitan, Liepard, and Manectric, so for the most part this is pretty much about the team I expected, although I definitely didn't really expect Weezing. I kind of expected something like Slowbro or Decidueye over it. Part of me is convinced that he brought Weezing because I ended up trading for it this week, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. Because I have Psychic, I at least have something to hit Weezing, I guess. Next up is Gudra with leftovers, Earthquake, Ice Beam, Dragon Pulse, and Acid Armor. I didn't really need a 4th coverage move after Earthquake, Ice Beam, and Dragon Pulse, because it kind of hits everything on his team for super effective damage, or at least neutral. So I opted for Acid Armor so I'd be able to take some kind of hit on the physical side if I could force a switch. A lot of the time I'll probably just be going for an attack, but if I see him switching into something and I want to be able to take a hit and then kill it off, such as Garchomp potentially, it may be good to just go straight for the Acid Armor. But yeah. Next up is Donphan with Weakness Policy, actually, with Earthquake, Ice Shard, Seed Bomb, and Rock Polish. This set proved to be really good in practice because it actually set up pretty well against Slowbro, surprisingly, and other stuff. But basically, this set kind of proved to be like the main win con this week. Rock Polish ends up actually outspeeding a pretty decent amount of his team, and Ice Shard hits a lot of stuff pretty super effectively, even though it's not actually stab or anything. It still does pretty decent damage because Donphan just has really good natural attack, I guess. Next up is Hariyama with Flame Orb Guts, Bullet Punch, Ice Punch, Close Combat, and Thunder Punch. I have a lot of punching this week, I guess. I didn't notice that until I was reading the team out loud. But Bullet Punch is there for Mega Diancie 100%, because I just wanted to be able to hit that thing 4 times super effective. Priority is always really nice, especially with something that hits as hard as Hariyama with a Flame Orb, which is ridiculous, by the way. And then Close Combat was there for Registeel. I have to be careful and get a little bit of prior damage off on Registeel before I can kill with Close Combat. Like, it's a very solid 2-hit KO, but I think it only does like 80 to 90% or so. So I can't just go in and OHKO it from full, so I gotta be careful of that, I guess. And finally, we have Zoroark with Dark Indian Z, Night Days, Nasty Plot, Extra Sentry, and Hidden Powered Ice. between these 4 moves, or between these 3 moves and Nasty Plot, I should actually be able to OHKO pretty much everything on the team. I was really looking forward to being able to get a Night Days off on something, to be perfectly honest, because Dark EMZ Night Days, especially at +2, does a ton of damage and stuff, but it doesn't really, like, do anything in this game. Like, he brought a team that was, like, very, very, very anti-Zoroark, which is kind of annoying. So Zoroark kind of went from being a potential prominent threat to not really that big of a threat, in my opinion. So I don't really have a great lead this week, because Hariyama doesn't really have Fake Out. I don't really want to go straight out for it because it's not going to be able to kill DNC from full without Guts. I believe it can with Guts, but not without Guts, if I remember right. So I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm going to go ahead and lead Jirachi here. It's a pretty predictable lead, and I'm just going to U-turn out, but I mean, there's nothing really else I can lead with. I didn't really want to lead Donphan because it's not, like, it's a pretty offensive Donphan, and I can't, like, get rocks up or anything, and I can't really go for offense straight out because Weezing kind of completely walls this Donphan, unfortunately. I didn't really practice too much against Weezing, so I didn't realize that my Donphan coverage was subpar for it. So now that Buzzwole's in, I really don't have anything for this. I didn't really have the best, like, defensive options for his team anyway, but the fact that he got this in for pretty much free, I guess, because I can't stay in with Hariyama and really do anything to this, means that I basically have to switch out here. I have to go Goodra because I don't want him to go straight for Leech Life and completely kill Jirachi or Zoroark or whatever. And plus Gooey, because Leech Life is contact, I get the Gooey drop, which means that I'm actually faster than him. He can't stay in because he's fearing something like a Flamethrower or something like that, I guess. So he's going to have to switch out here. I figure he's probably not going to go Registeel if he's predicting something like a Fire type attack. So he can either go Staraptor, Garchomp, Weezing, or DNC here. It's basically a 50-50 shot of what coverage move I should go for here to try to hit something. So I just go for Ice Beam because it hits 2 of the 4 things, basically. He goes DNC, and I get a pretty lucky crit to be able to do, like, any kind of damage to this thing. I get back up to a little bit over half, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to be able to take another hit from Buzzwole at this range. And now I have to try to switch into Omega DNC, which is also not very easy to switch into. So he basically gets to fire off a free hit on something on my team. Looking at my team in hindsight, Donphan by far is the most, like, expendable member of my team. But because it ended up doing so much in practice, and because it still has Ice Shard, which is important for stuff like Garchomp and Staraptor, I wanted to keep it around in the back. Nothing else can really switch into a Moonblast here, so I end up going Jirachi. Fluko reads me very well and just goes for an Earth Power. Like I said, I really didn't have anything. Like, this is the only thing that probably would have, like, lived in any way, shape, or form. And I have to reveal that I'm Scarfed there, because why else would I stay in for an Iron Head when Jirachi outspeeds? I go Donphan finally, but he kind of reads me even further and just goes for a Magnet Rise. I can do even less to this than I would be able to do to Weezing with this thing in the air. So I end up having to switch out again. He went for a Toxic there, which in my opinion wasn't, like, the perfect play, because I feel like I couldn't have really done anything to Donphan, but I guess he didn't know if I had, like, Superpower or something like that, now that I think about it, so never mind, it was a good play. I forget Donphan gets fighting coverage too. So I went Hariyama here. Like I was saying in the beginning of the video, I can't actually kill this thing from full with a close combat if it's physically defensive. And given the makeup of his team, and given how physically defensive the rest of his team is, I'm not sure if he is. But I do want to play it safe here. In case he does try to switch into something directly, I'm actually going to go for an Ice Punch here, just to kind of gauge damage, because I figure there's not really very much he can do to me. It also allowed me to scout for the counter, as well as his item of leftovers, which is nice, which means he's not, he's not Culverberry. Or not Culverberry, Choppleberry. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. which is another thing that I was afraid of. I didn't want to go for close combat, have him be Choppleberry, and then go for something like counter and kill me. So being able to scout for that is nice, and he'll actually be able to drop here from close combat. He gets a crit on the Earthquake, which doesn't really matter, I guess. It slightly lowers his longevity, I guess. But I'm going to have to switch out into something else here and just basically keep sacking stuff. It's just a quick cycle of sacking stuff the game, because this is actually probably one of the faster battles I've had, like, period. Partially because of this really dumb play here. I'm going to go ahead and pause and rewind and just kind of try to explain what's going on here. So after I get the kill, Buzzwole comes in and I have to sack something. So at this point I'm looking, should probably honestly still be Donphan, but for some reason I didn't really think Goodra was that important either because of Garchomp and DNC. Like Goodra was mostly for stuff that didn't really come, I guess. So I didn't really view it as that important. So I guess it's not the end of the world that I sacked it over Donphan, but Donphan was still probably more useful, or useless, I guess I should say. So at this point I should go Jirachi here, because it makes no sense for me not to go to Jirachi. I have Psychic. I'll scare this thing out. I'll be able to kill it if it stays in, because it's not Assault Vest, it's Life Orb, as it's shown a couple of times. But I'm not really sure why, but I went Azumarill here, and then on top of that I decided to try to make like the most unnecessary like double of all time to be able to put myself in a position to get a good attack off of Zoroark. I say this as confused as you probably are, because I don't really know what I was thinking at the time. I was trying to read my comments from like actually like during the battle, and all I was sad about was that my double didn't work. But I don't really know why I ever expected this double to work, because there was no reason for him not to like Poison Jab and just go for damage there. I end up catching it like 2 turns later, and I'm like, I don't know why I didn't just go Jirachi and go for a Psychic. Worst case scenario, I scare this thing out and it goes into anything to take a Scarf or like a modest Psychic from a Jirachi, which it doesn't really want to do. Best case scenario, I end up killing this thing, which I end up doing, so it just makes me feel even dumber for basically sacking Zoroark for no reason. Because now I actually don't have anything that naturally outspeeds Garchomp or, well, without the item, I guess. I don't have anything that naturally outspeeds Garchomp or Staraptor. Jirachi is still important here, but because this is the battle where I just continuously made a lot of really weird plays, I'm going to actually decide to stay in to scout if this thing's Scarfed or not. If I get the damage off here, I'm able to kill with Jirachi and then basically somehow clean up with a combination of Donphan and Hariyama. Good news, he's not Scarfed, I guess. Bad news, he kills Jirachi, and I now have absolutely nothing for Weezing. After turn 13, I 100% lost, even though this play was correct, and even though he had Yachi Berry, I was still able to kill. I was more focused on that than really what to do with this Weezing. Like, the second Weezing came in, I was like, oh shit, I lose, because I actually have nothing to do. I had to hope that he hoped that I had some, like, crazy coverage that he wasn't afraid of, or, like, should have been afraid of. Basically just kind of conceded at this point, to be perfectly honest. I mean, like, in the off chance he switched into Staraptor, I was able to get Nice Shard off, I guess. He shows that he's Z-Haze here to be able to get rid of my Belly Drum boost and just go for damage. Interestingly enough, if I would have actually been Belly Drum with the speed that I was at, I would have actually been able to get the Belly Drum off after his Haze, and then possibly go for like an Aqua Jet or something to be able to kill. But long story short, that obviously didn't happen. Weezing completely walled the rest of my team. I feel like I've been like a little critical in the past couple of videos, and I don't really mean to be, because I feel like my opponents are playing very well. And I feel like me being so critical of myself sometimes makes it seem like I'm trying to take away from my opponent's plays. Fluka played a really good game. I know he brought his all because he also views these battles as really important. And he definitely out-prepped. Weezing completely walled my team after Jirachi went down. Mega Dancy's really, really scary. And Buzzwole is also, because I didn't really do my best job around it. I don't know, like I try not to be like straight negative in any of these videos ever, because I do kind of want to make this like a positive experience a lot of the time, but this week specifically was really, really rough. Like I just wasn't really feeling very much after this week. I feel like I made like a lot of really, really weird plays that I don't normally make. And honestly, after this week, I almost considered just kind of packing the season in and just trying again next year. But then I took a step back. I gotta make this positive again. I took a step back, realized that my team just needed a little bit of tweaking, and I needed to kind of just breathe and stop getting in my head so much about all of these plays. I needed to prep a little bit better, because clearly that was getting in the way. And I needed to just kind of make sure that I was holding my aggression throughout games, instead of just kind of being picky and choosy about just being super hyper aggressive one turn and then like super conservative the next turn. So even though these rough losses the past couple of weeks kind of murdered my chances of playoffs, I'm still going to take this season and try to squeeze something out of it, because I think I still can. This league's still really competitive, and there's still a lot of parity, which is nice. So like all of the bottom teams have like wins at this point, I believe, and all of the top teams are like undefeated at this point, I guess. And there's a lot of like really, really, really close records at this point. So even though my team's not really doing that well at the moment, I do kind of have some optimism that I'll be able to turn it around. It starts with It starts with moves 2 and 3 that I made to try to fix my team up a little bit. I just realized I closed Showdown, so I'm not going to be able to do the thing that I did at the end of the last video. But I actually ended up trading with Fluka after this battle. We ended up trading Jolteon and Tangela away from our roster for Decidueye and Weezing, the thing that just got 3 kills against me. I went for this move originally almost solely for Decidueye, and Weezing was originally just going to be fodder. But as I've kind of grown to love both of these Pokemon, I realized that it was actually a pretty good trade for both of us, as well as being pretty needed bulk for my team. As you kind of saw in this game, I have trouble taking hits sometimes with this current roster. And that was one of the biggest things that I noticed, was that I had the offense to compete a lot of the time, but the second it came to having to take a hit, I wasn't able to do anything about it. And sometimes you have to take a hit in Pokemon, like whether you want to or not. So I needed bulk. I ended up getting it with Weezing. You saw a little bit of what I can do this week if you don't have a check for it. I also picked up the Decidueye, which I'm really excited for, because I've always wanted to use it in League format. I don't think Fluka brought it like at all this season, if I remember right. If he did, I don't really remember seeing it. But it's a really cool Pokemon, Grass Ghost, and it has a bunch of like cool bird moves, because it used to be a bird, I guess. It still looks like a bird to me, but it's Grass Ghost. But it gets stuff like Defog, it gets stuff like Brave Bird. It also gets a unique trapping move in Spirit Shackle, which is kind of cool. I used that a little bit in a little Kahuna tournament. It was pretty fun. So I'll probably try to use it again. But between these two moves, I'm on my way to replacing my roster, I guess. Like I kind of said at the end of the last video, I'm trying to move away from Rain, just because I don't think it's working for me for a full season. It would be nice if it was just something that was like kind of in the background with my roster, but I noticed that I kind of end up having to bring Pelipper more often than I don't, which ends up making me very predictable, which ends up making it pretty hard to do. So I ended up swapping away Pelipper last week. I ended up getting rid of Jolteon and my original switch for grass types, for a couple of other ones. and I'll make more changes next week, but that's for the next video. Next week we end up taking on Epsilon, coach of the Magnemighty. We actually have not played them on the channel before, I believe, but he's a friend of ours, so it'll be fun. Have a good one, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye. What's up, guys? Theo here with week 6 of the NES. This week we are taking on Epsilon, coach of the Magnemighty. We've never battled them on the channel before, so this will be a fun game between friends. If you guys missed the past couple of videos, I'm actually bulk recording weeks 4, 5, 6, and 7 because I fell kind of far behind on them, so apologies if I'm kind of stumbling because this is a lot more commentary than I'm used to, but I also don't really have a ton of time to record, so I kind of just gotta roll with it. This week I brought in Assault Vest, Thick Fat Hariyama with Thunder Punch, Close Combat, Fire Punch, and Knockoff. Black Sludge Wheezing, who we picked up last week over Tangela, with Flamethrower, Shadow Ball, Pain Split, and Toxic Spikes. It's a little weird, I guess, to not run Stab on Wheezing, but I realized Flamethrower and Shadow Ball actually hit more than Flamethrower and Sludge Bomb or Sludge Wave did. Pain Splits for recovery, and Toxic Spikes is for obviously toxicing stuff outside of Misty Terrain. Meloetta has Leftovers and sub 3 attacks, sub Shadow Ball, Energy Ball, and Hidden Power Fire. Again, actually no Stab. I was thinking about running Expert Belt because I wasn't running very much other coverage, but sub Leftovers ended up working pretty well because he has a pretty slow team. So if I'm able to get a sub up and then he tries to go for something like a Will-O-Wisp or a Thunder Wave or a Toxic or something like that, I basically just get a free head off on stuff. I also have another Assault Vest user in Azumarill with Superpower, Play Rough, Facade, and Aqua Jet. I kind of just wanted a bulky Azumarill this week because he has kind of slow, bulky team. So I figured I could afford to go a little less directly offensive with it and more just kind of be able to hit everything and anything I need to. Assault Vest also lets me take a hit from Heliolisk, I believe. If I remember right, it at least allows me to take a Volt Switch. I think it allows me to take a Thunderbolt too, but don't quote me on that. Next up is Mega Beedrill with U-Turn, Poison Jab, Drill Run, and Tailwind. Tailwind's pretty nice as a late game option if I need it. Hariyama actually ends up doing a ton of damage if I'm able to get a Tailwind boost off at the end of the game. Meloetta instantly outspeeds the rest of his team, even if Heliolisk is scarfed, if I believe. And even Donphan ends up being able to pretty much outspeed everything. Speaking of, Donphan is an offensive leftover set with Play Rough, Earthquake, Fire Fang, and Seed Bomb. I originally had Donphan as my second Assault Vest user of the week, because obviously it has 4 attacks, but it ended up working out a little bit better for him to just keep sturdy with leftovers, switching into rocks and stuff like that, and then just being able to have the coverage as I needed it. Epsilon also has Komao, Turtonator, Mega Blastoise, Scizor, and Wishcash at the beginning of this, which is the reason why I had Seed Bomb, by the way. Seed Bomb was specifically for Wishcash. I didn't really expect it to come, but you never know. So, my lead this game was actually designed to be Hariyama. I figure most of the time Donphan and Beedrill are a little bit more predictable of leads. But I went into this game 100% expecting to be able to lead Hariyama. With Assault Vest, it's able to take anything, even from a Chandelure. Even if it's like a Psyche MZ, I think it's able to take it. Not super well, but it's able to take it. So he ends up leading Ferrothorn, which is even better for me. I'm able to technically bait Chandelure here. Like, even if I give it Fire or Flash Fire, Flamethrower does absolutely nothing to me. But unfortunately, because he does not actually have an item knocked off here, knockoff doesn't kill. So he's able to also get a Psychic off. Again, because of Assault Vest, I'm able to live and get the kill. But I probably should have considered the possibility that he was a Z move on Chandelure. If you don't know, knockoff does not knock off Z crystals. And since it doesn't actually knock anything off, it only does 60 power instead of like the 130 or whatever it's supposed to do. So in all of my practice games, I had knocked something off Chandelure and killed it. I didn't even really know that it didn't kill if it didn't knock anything off first. So that was a bit of misprep on my part to have Hariyama take a little bit more damage than it needed to. But now that he switched into Finny, I don't really have any reason to stay in with Hariyama anymore. I'm able to take that pretty well. Not the best, but I can still obviously scare it out with what he thinks I have for poison coverage, as I just set up Toxic Spikes. He goes for a Swords Dance here, which is super scary because I didn't really expect them to just go like straight offensive. I'm now pretty afraid that this is a weakness policy like dual dance set, so I gotta kind of make my plays here pretty quick. I'm just going to go straight in a Donphan here. If he goes for a Rock Polish here as well, I'm still able to live anything and then just try to fire off, get this thing in range, and then kill it off with Meloetta at this point. He goes straight for a Rock Blast and thankfully only gets 2. I go for a Seed Bomb because it's quad effective and does a little bit more than Earthquake does after Solid Rock. He obviously kills with that Ice Punch, but I'm able to kill in return with Energy Ball. Thank God I stocked up on grass coverage this week. I go for a sub here on the off chance that he goes for a Thunder Wave, but he makes the right play and just goes straight for a knockoff. So the only thing that really wants to lose its item is Weezing. I guess Beedrill technically could have taken it, but I didn't really want it to, I guess. So I guess not predicting me to have Flamethrower because it's not the most coverage, or the most common coverage, I guess. He ended up staying in with Ferrothorn and allowed me to kind of pick it off there, which is really nice because I didn't really want him to get rocks up. Even if he switched into Heliolisk here, actually it would have done a pretty decent amount of damage because of Dry Skin. And I didn't really expect him to go into Tapu Fini on a poison type because he doesn't know that I don't actually have poison coverage. Like Toxic Spikes is my poison coverage, I guess, for the week. But he doesn't know that yet because I haven't shown Pain Split. So he wouldn't go Fini, and he also wouldn't go Araquanid. Well, he could have gone Araquanid, I guess, but didn't go Araquanid. So now that he goes Heliolisk here, the only real switch I have is Meloetta at this point. I end up sacking Hariyama first because it doesn't really do anything, but might as well just get Meloetta in for free, I guess. Because it's a 3-hit KO from here, I ended up just going for Energy Balls here over something like Hyper Voice, which would do a little bit more damage to Heliolisk itself. Just because if he did switch into Tapu Fini like he did here, I'm able to get a really, really good amount of damage off. And interestingly, I didn't know this, because Tapu Fini got hit by the Toxic Spikes first, it actually ended up getting poisoned before Misty Terrain went up. I just thought that was interesting because most of the time you don't really see a toxic Tapu Fini in Misty Terrain. I ended up just letting Beedrill come in and getting the last couple of kills of the game because I feel like my Mega should have some kills. But it's interesting that Tapu Fini got poisoned by these Toxic Spikes, but Araquanid didn't when Tapu Fini was the one that set up Misty Terrain. So I ended up just trying to do some chip damage here. It doesn't really matter at this point. I actually probably could have killed if I had Sludge Wave, which is interesting. But it's fine. It's whatever. I'll just take the 2-0 instead of the 3-0 and just get another kill with Mega Beedrill. Overall, I feel like this is probably the first like really solid battle I've had this season. Mega Beedrill did everything I wanted it to do. Donphan did what it needed to do and got damage off. It basically in every game for practice this week ended up basically getting a kill against something. It was normally Scissor or my tongue stopped working there for a second. It was normally Scissor over stuff like Ferrothorn. He does have a couple of like kind of common weaknesses that I was able to pick out. I was able to help him like after this week and kind of like patch up a little bit more of his roster, but he did have a couple of shared weaknesses that I think I was able to exploit fairly well, and my team just kind of happened to match up pretty well, I guess. But overall it was a good game. I was pretty happy with it. And after the battle, we actually ended up making a couple more moves because, like I said, I was trying to change this roster. We ended up actually taking Tapu Fini from Epsilon in exchange for Azumarill. I love Azumarill, and honestly, I would probably draft it again, especially after Sap Sipper's thing. I'm not going to let myself live that down because that was really embarrassing, but Tapu Fini is something that I've actually been very interested in for a while. First off, it has very, very nice natural bulk, just 115 and 130 in both defenses, with 70 HP is actually pretty decent, as well as base 85 speed for what is normally a wall is pretty nice. It also gets stuff like Calm Mind if I want to set up and try to sweep with it. It's another very good defogger, and it also just has like a pretty good range of special moves. It also gets Nature's Madness, which is cool. It's basically a special type Super Fang, I guess, if you want to think of it like that. Overall, I think Tapu Fini does a little bit more for my team than Azumarill did, because I already have a very offensive team. I didn't want to shake up the chemistry too much by dropping Azumarill for something that like didn't have like super synergy with my team. And Epsilon was looking for something with a little bit more offense. So we realized just swapping Water Fairies actually would kind of help both of us pretty well. I'm actually also very excited to get Misty Terrain on my team, because I've noticed that people try to spam status against me a lot of the time. So why not get the terrain that just gets rid of status, I guess. It also makes my it also kind of tweaks my Fairy Dragon Steel Core to Jirachi, Tapu Fini, and Gudra, which I really like personally. I feel like that's really good base bulk, and good enough offense to be able to kind of pivot around with the other like very, very good offense I have on my team. I don't really try to look for walls that have like offensive capabilities, I guess, but Tapu Fini has enough offense and ways of preventing setup, which is more important, I guess, that I feel like it'll actually fit pretty well, and I'm pretty excited to pick it up. But that's also not the only move that we did, because I told you guys I'm pretty convinced on like completely reworking this team. I ended up dropping tier 4 Amistar and picking up tier 4 Dodrio. I frankly was tired of Jirachi and Zoroark being the fastest naturally things on my team. And honestly, even when I had Jolteon, I wasn't really 100% feeling it as that role of super fast thing, I guess. It just wasn't really super powerful. Like, I basically needed to have it as like Life Orb all the time to be able to do it, and then it was just, I don't know, like, something about Jolteon, I guess, like, didn't 100% vibe with me as my fast thing. But after I traded it away, I realized I needed something faster than base 105, because then that basically forces me to run Scarf Zoroark anytime I want to outspeed anything over 100, which is not what I wanted to do. So I ended up picking up base 110 Dodrio here, both in attack and speed, which is really, really nice. All the other stats aren't very good, but quite frankly, you don't really need the other stats if that's all you're really using it for. Tangled Feet's really cool because it also gets a move called Thrash, which is basically a normal type Outrage. So Tangled Feet Thrash is a really cool combination that I plan on showing off. It also gets Early Bird if I want to use it as sleep fodder and stuff. I probably won't very often with Tapu Fini, if I'm being honest, but it is an option. I'm just gonna leave Thrash here because it's like the coolest move that it gets. But it's also a Baton Passer. It also gets Agility and Sword Stance, I believe, if I remember right. Yeah. So it can pass stuff. It also gets Acupressure if I want to randomly pass stuff. That might be fun for a meme week, I guess. But overall, I really wanted a normal type on the team that wasn't Meloetta, just so I wasn't forced to kind of double up on psychic types every time I wanted a normal type. I wanted a flying type again because I wanted to be able to Brave Word spam. After I dropped Pelipper, I noticed that I was kind of lacking that in prep some weeks, so I wanted to be able to get it back. I also like having physical normal types for offensive stuff, as weird as it is. It's kind of a weird distinction, but Facade's such a good move, and normal physical stuff is normally handled by like burning it pretty much, or like normally when you have physical stuff, the easiest way to handle it is just by burning it and have like -2 attack, and you don't really have to worry about it as much anymore. But stab boosted Facade kind of negates that and turns it into a huge threat on its own. So I feel like I have a lot of ways to handle status on my team now, which is interesting, and I also have a lot of ways to handle hazards. which should help Dodrio. I also don't really have a ton of things that are weak to rocks, so I'm not really super worried about adding another rock weakness right now. I'm pretty sure this gets defog if I wanted to. It doesn't get defog, that's funny. One bird that doesn't get defog, I guess. But that's okay. I don't need it as a defogger. But anyway, that's kind of my overall team changes for this week. I have one more battle to get through and one more series of team changes that I have to make before I'm fully caught up. So thank you guys for watching. Sorry this is a faster one, but it's a little bit more straightforward of turns, I guess, and I just wanted to talk about my free agent stuff a little bit faster. But have a good one, and I will see you next week when we go ahead and battle Crazy Razy, coach of the Swindon Fletchlings. Have a good one. Bye.